Washington offers a block. The blitz comes from the other side. DeQuell Jackson.
And now again, DeQuell Jackson.
You're listening to Believe in Colts with co-hosts Lawrence Owen and DeQuell Jackson, bringing you the latest and greatest about the shoe.
Brady, middle, intercepted by DeQuell Jackson. Play fake, Bryant, intercepted, picked off at the 5, touchdown DeQuell Jackson.
Touchdown DeQuell Jackson. That always gets me all hyped every time I hear that, the last part of that, man. That must have been one of the greatest feelings you've ever had. Yeah, listen, as a defensive player.
Oh, yeah. I'm not the one to boast about myself, but every time I hear that clip, I go back to those moments like, man, I was pretty good at one point. I could play this game at a high clip. But, yeah, I enjoyed it all. And to score a touchdown defensively, I think I have 3. And everyone was special. Everyone, especially that one, because we were actually down and Andrew had been hurt and Hasselbeck was the quarterback. And we were still in the midst of possibly getting to the postseason. And we needed to win that game. And we were down early. And when I got that interception for that pick 6, it kind of, pushed us forward and we won the game. And I remember the locker room and it was just a great moment. It was a great moment.
That's awesome. That's awesome.
Yeah.
It's just moments like that you're able to look back on fondly, and go, yeah, I can actually boast about myself a little bit. Yeah.
right. And speaking of, oh yeah.
Yeah, go ahead, man.
No, I was going to say, speaking of moments, the Kansas City Chiefs and this weekend's game, the Bengals, I want to start this one off because this one's been on my chest. I still can't believe it. The Bengals go into Kansas City and beat the number one, or not the number one ranked team in the AFC, but a well-stacked Patrick Mahomes team, and they showed their dominance in every facet. And there's so much here to talk about because I still can't believe. I'm still numb. I still numb that Patrick Mahomes, he doesn't rarely have bad games, but that second half of that game, I don't know what happened. It was a bad decision after bad decision, and he seemed not to be able to get in rhythm from an offensive standpoint, and their defense struggled because their offense couldn't produce any points and move the ball down the field. So it was just I still can't believe it. I'm numb to it.
Yeah. In all honesty, it was kind of shocking considering you looking at his first half statistics. He had like almost 300 yards passing in the first half.
Yeah.
And then the second half, literally, if I remember seeing the stat correctly on the television, right before he started that final drive to send the game into overtime, I think he had 30. I think the entire offense only had 34 yards. What? That's a Patrick Mahomes-led offense, and for an entire half, you had 34 yards against Cincy. I mean, their defense is pretty good, but I mean, it's not, the Bills, what we saw, the week prior, it was absolutely shocking. Guys, real quick, I just want to say that the Super Bowl is coming up in 2 weeks, and there's more money thrown around before the Super Bowl game on bets than you could possibly imagine. And Bet Online is a great site for you to use to throw those bets around and possibly make yourself a little bit of money. Bet Online would like to wish you a happy new betting year as we continue the march through the playoffs and beyond. Bet Online remains the number one spot for all the best sports wagering action for 2022. New year, new updated desktop and mobile website. Sign up today and receive your 50% welcome bonus on your first deposit. Just use the promo code BELIEVE, that's BLEAV, to get started. From football, basketball, hockey, boxing, UFC, right to your favorite Vegas casino games, don't wait to take advantage of all the amazing offers available for this upcoming season. Bet Online is the fastest, easiest way to wager on all your favorite sports. Bet Online, where the game starts. Speaking of starting, we just got done talking about that. What was the difference? I mean, after the game, that overtime was a complete flip from what we saw in the Bills game, where everybody was throwing this big old fit. Overtime rules need to be changed. Yeah. And since he's like, no, don't, you just got to freaking play defense, man, if you don't get the ball first.
Exactly. Show up when it's your turn to show up and things will work out. I think for the Chiefs standpoint, Patrick Mahomes, there was a critical point in that first half, right as the first half expired, was Kansas City was driving. They were up 21-3 at this point, and you don't come away with any points. It was not the best decision by Patrick Mahomes by throwing the ball late to Tyreek Hill in the flats, and you didn't have any timeouts, so you didn't get a touchdown, nor did you get 3 points, and that seemed to come back and bite them in the tail when they needed it the most. But I don't think their offense and Patrick Mahomes ever recovered from that moment. You go back to the week prior game against one of the greatest games to ever be played at the quarterback position, him and Josh Allen. I saw an assertive effort from Patrick Mahomes to use his legs to extend plays, not extend plays running behind the line of scrimmage, but going north. When the defense back was turned, he did a lot of running around and just ended up with nothing. And typically the Patrick Mahomes we're used to seeing, he comes up with something. Someone's going to get open, but they didn't. And the Bengals defensive line, the person that deserves the most credit, whom I don't think is getting enough credit, I had to look his name up because I didn't know who he was. The defensive coordinator for the Cincinnati Bengals, Lou Anarumo. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But he deserves a lot of credit because he stopped one of the box office offenses in the National Football League and stifled them to only 3 points in the second half. So he did an amazing job, and so did obviously the Bengals. But I'm still stunned. I didn't give him a chance. I thought the Bengals, when they jumped up 21-3 in the first half, I thought it was going to be a blowout. I was like, all right, it's over. And then all of a sudden, the second half rolls around. Kansas City's defense starts to show either tiredness or just lack of focus. I think those guys went in a lot overconfident, thought they were going to win just like the rest of America at home, and they got beat by a team that is arguably, they went into this game a 7-point underdog. No one gave them a shot. And yet Joe Franchise and that offensive line, who was what made me nervous thinking you can rely on these guys, they played better. If you would have told me the Bengals would have more sacks on Patrick Mahomes than the Chiefs and that front seven would have on Joe Burrow, I would have thought you were crazy. But they came to play when they needed the most, and Jamar Chase played well. Joe Cool played well. It was just a really, it was almost, do you give the credit to the Bengals? Do you think the Chiefs lost it, which I think they did, but I'd have to give credit to the Bengals of playing just a flawless game when they needed to it, making the plays down the stretch. Defensively, definitely when they needed to in overtime.
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's funny, you talk about Chase playing well. Jamar Chase was kind of bottled up for the most part of this game. Mm-hmm. You saw him show up occasionally. And if I told you before the game, that the Chiefs, for the most part, was going to take Chase out of the game for the most part, and then CJ Uzomah, their tight end, was not going, was going to leave with an MCL sprain sometime in the first half, you'd look at me and go, well, this is a blowout. Yeah. Right. And Burrow just moved to his other guys, I mean, T. Higgins made massive plays. T. Higgins
had a big day.
Yeah, T. Higgins had a big day. You saw Tyler Boyd making critical third down receptions when he needed to. And they leaned on the run game. Joe Mixon wasn't blowing it up every time he touched the ball, but he was getting enough yards to where they were able to continue using him. And I think that helped a lot because that kept their defense fresh, right?
Yes.
For that fourth quarter and overtime because they were able to keep playing at a high clip because they kept their offense on the field. So their defense wasn't so tired in the second half and overtime.
Yeah, there's a lot it was just complete. Those guys showed up. I thought, I'll go back to the point I made earlier. This is why Tom Brady is so great, because you have small windows to be able to make it to a conference championship game, to move on and play in the Super Bowl and take advantage of those teams and win the games that you're supposed to win. And I think the team, everyone was overconfident playing at home, playing against a Bengals team that they thought barely squeaked by, shouldn't have been there. And those guys did nothing but make plays, when they needed to with a very young roster. And quite frankly, like you alluded to, undermanned. The tight end goes out. So what does Joe Burrow do? Find other open guys when they take away Jamar Chase. But then you find Jamar Chase when the game really matters to make great catches when you need them to. So their star showed up. We've said this from day one of the season. Your stars have to show up when you need them to. And the Bengals made more plays down the stretch. And the whole overtime rule discussion needs to be put to bed at this point. There was this the fact that the Bengals were able to force a turnover, and you never know how this game is played. And now we have two teams that I thought the Rams were expected. They had a good shot of going, and the Bengals, no one in their right mind would have thought they would be playing for a Super Bowl. And there was a stat during the game that showed this was the first time in NFL history that the number 1 overall pick has taken his team to a Super Bowl within his first 2 seasons. So kudos to Joe Burrow. He's played phenomenal, and he's played with a not so good offensive line, and he's able to carry his team and put his team on the back when last year the team had only won 4 games, the year before that 2. So the city of Ohio is probably going crazy right now, especially in Cincinnati.
Oh, definitely. And then let's go ahead and talk about they're going to be in 2 weeks playing at the house of the other team that won, and it's weird. It's so weird that all these years, no team has ever hosted a Super Bowl. And then last year, Tampa Bay did it.
Yeah, right.
This year, the Rams are doing it.
Right. Back-to-back years.
That's so odd. And, and
it's such an advantage.
And what's funny is, I don't know if you know this, but because every year, home team, visiting team is swapped, right? Between AFC, NFC. This year, home team is AFC.
Oh,
so literally the Rams will be playing in SoFi at their own house as the visiting team.
Wow.
That's
another driving and motivating factor for them to go out and win this game. I mean, I know we're not getting to that right now, but that is enough fuel on that fire to say, you know what, this is my house. I should be the home team. I'm gonna go out here and play my best game ever. But I thought Matt Stafford played a brilliant game, and this is the epitome of a great talent being wasted with an organization that just couldn't figure it out. They just could not figure it out. And now, obviously, Sean McVay, I don't think he called his best game, but I think with his creative mind offensively, with Matthew Stafford's, attributes and arm strength and experience and poise and all these different things and fourth quarter comebacks that he's been accustomed to throughout his entire career, he was only being who he had been his entire career. And now with 2 number 1s, Odell Beckham had a huge day, over 100 yards receiving. Cooper Kupp, who everyone knew was his number 1 target, he had a big day. So everything worked well for the Rams. Granted, it was a close game for the most part, but in the end, when they needed the most, Cooper Kupp, he comes through in the clutch, and he was the greatest. He has solidified himself as one of the greatest receivers during this era right now. And I hope he's finished his thing off when he's for the Super Bowl here in a few weeks.
Yeah, that first half, it was misleading because if you looked at the stats and you look at Stafford's stats and you're like, well, he's not having that good of a game, right? He's got an interception. His completion percentage ain't that high. And you look at it and you go, well, start off the game. OBJ dropped a wide open pass.
Yeah.
And then Cooper Kupp dropped a wide open pass that could have been a touchdown. And then the guy who had a big game last week, who I ain't even going to try to pronounce his name, dropped a wide open back of the end zone pass.
I didn't know who he was.
Dime shot. Yeah.
Yeah. I was like, who is this? Number 18. Like, who is this guy?
Yeah.
And yeah, I thought it was over. When I saw that, I'm like, geez, this doesn't happen. Like at that moment, I thought Matthew Stafford couldn't catch a break. And I thought it was going to be trouble. But
they all stepped up in the second half and started making those plays that you were accustomed to seeing that offense with Matt Stafford do. When the Rams traded, I'm going to say this until the end of the year, until the end of the Super Bowl. When the Rams traded for Matt Stafford, they were my pick for the NFC in the Super Bowl. that I said I thought they were the best team with Matt Stafford on the team. And this is before Von Miller came, right? This is before OBJ came, during the season when those happened. I thought they were the best team in the NFC. I was like, Matt Stafford is just that good. But Matt Stafford had, this thing hanging over his head the whole can't get to the playoffs, can't win in the playoffs, that kind of situation. And dude, it only took his first year.
Yeah, to be able to, get rid of those notions that he can't win the big one, to do that in his first year, such a great story. And the one person I feel bad for is Jared Goff right now, because they swapped. Those guys swapped, and they were abysmal this past season. So it goes to show you, I have a ton of respect for Sean McVay and that front office to be able to make a tough decision like that, because Jared Goff had taken them to a Super Bowl, and yet within a few years things have changed, and now you have Matthew Stafford, a guy that can run and operate this offense the way I believe Sean McVay envisioned it to run, with a big arm quarterback that can make the deep throw and has the experience and the fourth quarter comeback experience, and et cetera, et cetera. So let me go to the 49ers for a second, and which I thought was a biggest mistake during that game. When you had the lead, the last 10 to 12 minutes of the game, the guy who carried you to a conference championship never touched the football in Deebo Samuels. I thought that was a huge mistake. Huge mistake. I don't know how Shanahan forgot to do this, or no one was in his ear, say, hey, we have to get our best players the ball. I don't understand how it didn't happen, but he needed to touch the ball, and I thought it hurt him in the end. And Jimmy Garoppolo, you get some good, you get some bad. We really don't know who he is. Is he's the guy that can that you pay to make big plays when you need them? I thought he came up short in the end, and the play to seal the game, we've seen that play far too many damn times. And when he did it, I'm like, oh no. Oh my God. You cannot end, if this is the end for Jimmy G with San Francisco, that is not a play you want front office and the decision makers to remember. You flicking the ball away, 3rd and 13. You had another play.
Yeah, I mean, it was 4 down territory. Come on now.
You had another play. Just take the sack. Live to see another day, but don't just lose the game and one dumb mistake. So,
and there's so many Colts fans out there that were, so high on Jimmy Garoppolo, and they were like, he doesn't make those stupid mistakes, and he's a winner, and you'll never see him do the kind of things that Carson Wentz does, especially in important times, and then bam, and you're like, that is definitely something that Carson Wentz would have done, once a game, or something of that nature.
Every GM took note of that. It's like, Jimmy G, when we needed it the most, this is the play that he left us with, and that could be tough for any GM to get over, to bring a guy into their building.
The thing that I was against Jimmy G the whole time, to be fair, was I felt that his medium to long range passing accuracy was awful. Anything past 15 yards was awful. He made I think 2 completions, air yards over 15 in that game, but he missed 4. So you're 33%. You don't want to be 33% from 15 yards on. You just don't. You just don't want to do that. But I'm sure there'll be teams out there that's going to look at Jimmy G, because there's you got who's going to be the quarterback of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers next year if Tom Brady retires, if he comes off this yo-yo, because how the whole I don't know if you paid attention to social media, but it was announced.
I have.
Tom Brady's retiring. Wait, no, he's not. Yes, he is. No, he's not. All weekend.
right. All weekend. I guess he's taking his time, and he wants to, it has to confirm it. It has to come directly from him. But
oh yeah, definitely.
Listen, a guy that close and nothing is intentional. I feel like everything is intentional, and for this news to break when it did, it probably has some inner workings to it in terms of guys thinking about signing back with the Bucks because they're not going to bring back 22 starters. It's just not going to happen. Too many key players on that team were on one-year deals for that reason. But yeah, back to your original point about Jimmy G and possibly the Bucks being a team of interest, I could see that happening for sure. But Jimmy G is a solid start. He's a solid quarterback in this league. He's just not a Joe Burrow, a Josh Allen. There's tiers. He's not at the top tier class as you would hope to have at your quarterback position, but he is a guy that his stats are misleading because he wins, but it's just not pretty the way he wins. It's just not that drop back Patrick Mahomes, light you up 15 yards or more. It's that intermediate routes that can work, but in this league during this time, you need a speed guy that can take a top off of defense. You need a quarterback that can hit him in stride.
Yeah, and Jimmy just can't do that. He's great at leading a receiver during those little short, quick routes or a screen play or something like that to get that yak yardage. And that's what, the Niners have been, running off of all these years with Jimmy G. You're seeing it all the time. But generally, whenever you see something past 15 yards, if it's a completion, it's because the receiver made an absolute fantastic catch. Kittle had a fantastic catch that completed one just this past week. Or yesterday.
But we cannot let the defense off the hook. That defensive line I thought the Rams offensive line played exceptionally well, keeping Bosa and Armstead. I didn't hear Armstead's name throughout the entire day. They neutralized them. They neutralized these guys, and anytime
they doubled Bosa the entire night.
Yeah, they refused to let Bosa and Armstead be a factor in this game. And then you flip on to the other side of the ball. Aaron Donald was quiet for the most part yesterday. He was pretty quiet, but obviously he gets a lot of attention. And guess what? He showed up when they needed it the most. And Von Miller that's why they went out and got Von Miller and other guys. But just Aaron Donald just cannot be stopped. He is a one-man wrecking crew, and he can take over any game at any moment.
Yeah, you could tell what the Rams' defensive plan was for this game. Stop the run game. Force Jimmy G to beat us. I think they averaged around 3 yards a carry as a team, as the entire team of the Niners during that game. And if you could do that to the Niners, you have a pretty good shot at beating them. Because that's what they're based off of, right? Is that physical downhill type running and yak yardage. So congratulations to the Rams. Congratulations to the Bengals. Both you guys made it to the show. And this will be a very interesting Super Bowl coming up. We've already discussed a little bit about it, about how, the Rams will be hosting it, but they're the visiting team, which is odd. Burrow, basically you said earlier, you might as well almost consider him a rookie because he missed over half the season last year due to the injury to his knee.
I'm just so impressed the way he's played this postseason because regular season defense tempo is a lot different than regular season tempo in the postseason and different schematical changes. And he was able to, for whatever Kansas City was doing early in that ball game that didn't have, Joe Burrow and his offense rolling, he figured it out the second half. They made the proper adjustments and they made the plays. They made big, impactful plays that we're typically used to seeing on the other side of the ball from Tyreek Hill and Patrick Mahomes and company. So he is, I've never seen anything like it. His poise is off the charts. And clearly his ability to read defenses and his ability to lead, he's definitely showing all that it factor that you necessarily can't really study or know much about before you actually pull the trigger on a guy like that. And he's been everything and more than for that organization. The Bengals are in the Super Bowl. I can't even, that sounds so weird rolling off my tongue right now, but they are there for a reason. They put in the work and they won the games they needed to get them put themselves in this position.
We were this close. Think about this. We were this close to that 1980 Super Bowl rematch when the Niners played Cincinnati, that close. But no. Matt Stafford's like, I got this, man. And Jimmy's like, you can have it.
All right, just literally take it, get it away from me. Man, oh man.
Okay, so moving on from the championship weekend, which was absolutely fantastic to sit down and watch on Sunday. It was just jam-packed from 3 o'clock all the way through. Absolutely,
I don't think
wonderful.
I moved off my couch.
No, it was a it was as good as divisional weekend, right?
Yeah,
I mean, you love the divisional weekend. Now, wild card weekend was awful. Awful. All right. Too many blowouts, but divisional weekend through championship. I just hope the Super Bowl is very similar to the last 2 weeks of the playoffs.
Agreed.
I mean,
listen, the Bengals are such an. I don't know this to be true, but I have this feeling that the Bengals will be a huge underdog to what looks like a stacked all-star superstar team. No one's going to give them a shot, and they're going to use that as that. They're going to play that underdog card. Heck, they went into Kansas City and beat a very good football team. So they are riding on going into sci-fi with a lot of confidence, and I think they got a chance. They have a chance. I really do. I think the city of Ohio and Cincinnati, or the city of Cincinnati, is going to show up for their Bengals in SoFi Stadium. And I think it's going to be a really close football game. I really believe that. I really believe the nerves are going to kick in for Matt Stafford. Granted, he hasn't been in these big moments. And right now, if I were to choose which quarterback to lean on, man, Joe Burrow makes it tough, because you think with his inexperience, there's no way he's going to be able to manage all those emotions and manage just everything that comes with being in a Super Bowl. But yet, here's a guy who wasn't good enough to be a starter at Ohio State, goes on to walk on at LSU, wins the Heisman, is the number 1 overall pick, and now in 2 years, he's doing something no other number 1 overall pick has done, is get to the Super Bowl. So the guy is poised. It's clear. He has the track record of it. And I think he's going to will his team to, I don't want to make any predictions right now, but it's going to be a close ball game, in my opinion.
So I like what Matt Stafford's done this postseason as well. He's looked very poised and went out there and made plays when they needed to be made. So this will be a very, very good game between two guys who have never seen a Super Bowl, never even had a playoff win, and that now they're in the Super Bowl. That's just so weird. Neither of these guys had a playoff win before this year, and now they're in the Super Bowl.
Right.
Wow.
And you look at some of the teams back in the day from Cincinnati when Carson Palmer was there, Ocho Cinco, TJ Houshmandzadeh, Marvin Lewis. They had a really good football team, and somehow they couldn't win a playoff game. And you thought when obviously that team was broken up, whether it was retirement or what have you, no one saw this coming. No one did. And but I think that's going to change. What's going to change the math in this game is up front. The game is always going to be won up front, whether you like it or not. And Aaron Donald, Leonard Floyd, those two guys with the holes that Cincinnati clearly has on the offensive line. Granted, they played really good. Von Miller, they played a really good game yesterday, but it's only you're talking about some of the best guys to ever pass rush in the National Football League. So that is going to be challenging.
One of those guys you named is arguably, by a lot of people, the best defensive lineman in football history. Now, I'm not there yet. I'm a Reggie White guy personally.
Yeah, I'm a Warren Sapp. Yeah. Oh, yeah. So it's a
I mean, there's arguments for like Bruce Smith, and
yeah. We don't want to go down that path.
No. There's just so many great names in history.
Right.
But I want to move on from championship weekend. I want to talk about the Indianapolis Colts now. Get into that a little bit. Now, a lot of head coaches have been hired that there were vacancies. I think there's still a couple teams that are still, looking around. Obviously, the Indianapolis Colts have an entire defensive staff that they're going to have to hire out because obviously you get a new DC. When I got the word that he was taking the defensive and the defensive backs coach and the linebackers coach to Chicago with him, I kind of got depressed because I really liked both of them. But at the same time, my thought that's his group. Of course, he's going to take it with him, right? It was going to happen no matter what. This is going to be a whole new group of people on that defensive side of the ball,
right?
And I'm curious, this is going to be mostly thrown at you where you're going to take center stage and talk about this. But I'm curious with what the Colts have player wise, with their skill sets and their abilities and things. Will Ballard and Reich be looking at someone do you think that they're going to look at someone to take that defensive coordinator spot, someone that's going to have a very similar scheme, the way Matt Eberflus had with kind of a zone situation? Because I'm hearing they're looking at the defensive backs coach for the Cowboys, so that's a very similar situation there. Or do you think they might go with a different, a completely different setup? Do you think that this team could be a man press, pressure type, send extra guys kind of type defense with the personnel they have?
Yeah, that's the $1 million question, right? That's addressing the elephant in the room is what's going to happen on that side of the ball, because you've invested some good money in the guys. You have some young guys who are proven Pro Bowl guys, and they flourished under Matt Eberflus and his system. And the easy question or easy answer to that question, in my opinion, would be you find someone that has a lot of that has a similar defense, that has a lot of overlapping features within their defense to fit the mold of our defense, to fit the personnel of our defense. And it's a great question for me because I've dealt with that my entire career early on in Cleveland, where there wasn't a year. I didn't go 2 years in the same system, but maybe one time. And every other year I had a different coordinator. So again,
good Lord, that has to be so difficult as a player to sit there. That's like being a coach, a quarterback's coach, and having a different quarterback for 4 straight years. Oh wait,
it is. It is a struggle. It is really a struggle, and you can never. And now you have these guys who are currently on the roster who have developed under Eberflus in the last few years. They understand the system. They understand the little nuances of the system. It's really going to come down to obviously who's available. But if you want this defense to pick up where it left off or be better, you need a guy that runs a similar defense. Now, there's a chance they may have a guy to come in and he may run a blended scheme of somewhat of what Eberflus did and somewhat of his own style, just to help the transition. And then now you have to figure out, are these players good enough? Are these players, do these players fit what the defensive scheme requires? So again, this is a team that's a sideline to sideline, fast, zone to man concept, not really aggressive from a pressure standpoint. You're pressure when needed to, but if you bring in a guy that's about man coverage, blitzing behind the line of scrimmage, I think you have some. That's not ideal for this team. Now, do I think they can do it? Yeah, you draft well, you bring in some free agents. I think it could be done, but from a linebacker standpoint, looking at our linebackers and Darius Leonard, his strengths are zone. His strength is in open field, reading the quarterback, getting his hands on balls, playing behind the line of scrimmage at times. So it's going to be interesting to see what moves they make, because now this defense, this is a big moment for Frank Reich. And if he gets it right, I feel like he'll be around. But if he doesn't, and you compound that with a questionable guy under center and Carson Wentz, that is a recipe for disaster. So this move is going to have major implications of how this season turns out and what happens after the season.
Yeah, this is, not every team in the NFL is built like the Colts. I mean, not only from the scheme standpoint of 4-3-3-4, but there's a lot of 4-3 teams out there that don't have the type of linebackers and defensive linemen that the Colts run. They still running with the heavier guys, which works in some. I mean, you got pluses and minuses to both things.
Right. Darius Leonard needs to be covered up. He's he's not a 3-4 traditional 3-4 where you have to go down and butt press and get rid of offensive linemen that outweigh you by 150 pounds. That's not his game. If you bring a coordinator in that runs that old school 3-4 where your backers are uncovered, you're going to struggle. Heck, him and I are probably around the same size. He's a much better athlete than I was, and I hated that old school traditional 3-4 because it is brutal. And with guys with a 4-3, you cover him up. It allows him to only have a solo gap. You don't have to. We call it, playing two gaps at once. He's a guy. Give him one responsibility. Give your backers one gap, one responsibility, and let them play to their strength. And that's playing, with speed and playing with instinct. So that's going to be a big. Chris Ballard has to get this right. They have to get this right, because if you don't, you're wasting all this input and all this time and energy and scouting, getting the right guys to fit what Eberflus wanted to run defensively.
Now, just because Matt Eberflus is out of the building now does not mean that what he brought to the organization is gone. There is going to be remnants, in my opinion, of what he left, just because of what, the impression that he left on the players, especially the leaders, like the no loafing thing, where, you go out, you practice as hard as you play. Right. And I think that's a situation that no matter what defensive coordinator is hired and what other staff, that is something that these players, even if it's not taught by the coaching staff, would probably still, I'm hoping, implement that in the locker room and on the field when they're practicing.
Yeah.
Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, that's definitely one of the, this team is really good. Heck, Darius Leonard accounted for almost half of the turnovers with the Colts. So you're going to need someone that really understands how to turn the ball over and some of those good things. And when you were talking, you reminded me of when Greg Minuski left the Colts and we had a new coordinator come in. And I remember having a discussion with Chuck Pagano and about, okay, what coordinator are we going to bring in? Because heck, I'd had a really good season under Greg Minuski. He kind of he used me for he used what I did well, and that was blitzing, one-on-one on running backs, and he left me in zone, and I wasn't really doing a lot of man-to-man coverage. So I remember the new coordinator comes in, and we're running pretty much the same defense, but different terminology and different just thought process behind it. We called things a little bit different, but there was a lot of carryover, a lot of similarities to what we had done the previous few years. So when the coordinator came in, and that's the sign of a good coach. So that makes me believe someone is going to come in to run or have a lot of similarities between how they ran this defense the last few years. Because you don't want this team to drop off and feel like they're playing like robots because they're trying to do and grade out well. Because this new system, you want guys to play not effortlessly, but like without thinking. You want to allow them to play fast, and when you understand the system, the scheme, it allows you to play fast as opposed to thinking about every play, what your responsibility is, as opposed to reacting to what you see in front of you.
So. Matt Eberflus left. Obviously, we've discussed this at length multiple times. If you don't know, Matt Eberflus is no longer the defensive coordinator for the Indianapolis Colts. He's now the head coach for the Chicago Bears. It's only the 20th time we've said this. He had an interview, his first press conference,
So,
after that. You did watch that?
Yes.
He mentioned that he does not believe head coaches should be making the play calls. Okay. Now, is that indirectly a shot at Frank Reich?
I mean, it sounds that way, but I guess he's given, or we could take it as whoever he hires as his offensive coordinator or defensive coordinator is purely their job. And I want to attract as many great football minds as possible. He could be playing that game, but yeah, that's his philosophy. Whether that's the way he feels about, I agree. I think the head coach has a bigger responsibility of game management and making sure he's leading so he can fill out his team to know when to make certain calls or when to get in a coordinator's ear. Hey, we need to be more aggressive here. Hey, we need to fall back here, but allow those guys to coach. But I could see how that could be a direct, indirect way of poking at Frank Reich. But I know Flus, and I don't think he would play those games at the first presser with the Chicago Bears. But
I don't think it would have been an intentional shot at Frank Reich. I think they have a good, as far as I know, they're both really good people, and I think they have a really good relationship between each other.
Yeah.
I'm just saying you look at that, and that seems like an indirect, shot at how Frank Reich, coaches.
I can understand that because a lot of head coaches I've been around, they've meddled, whether they were a defensive coach or an offensive coach, they just meddled and just, that's where miscommunication can happen. Where if you have a defensive head coach and he's sitting in your defensive room and he's telling you how to play a certain coverage or play a certain route or read certain things when you're walking through the facility, and now your defensive coordinator is telling you something different, you're getting pulled in two different directions, and that's how miscommunication happens, and you're not as solid as you would like to be, whether you're offensive unit or the defensive unit. So yeah, that has a lot of gray area in that. And again, I feel like if you hired the guy to be your offensive coordinator, let him do that and input when you can, because here's the thing with coordinators, head coaches aren't in every meeting. So if a coordinator is going through his weekly spiel of, hey, we're playing whomever, and you're going through your Rolodex and scouting and doing all these different things, you're going through the week, and the head coach decides to sit in your meeting on a Thursday when you've had all day Thursday, and he decides to sit in your evening meeting, he's missed a lot, and he's just meddling. So everyone's going to listen to the head coach. I've had that happen. It's happened before. It happens more than you think. But we'll see. We'll see how Flus does. I think he needs to go out and hire a really good offensive mind, because he's a defensive coach, and you have Justin Fields. We've seen what Matt Nagy, who was supposedly the guru of quarterbacks, just completely mismanaged that quarterback situation. That's partly the reason he's no longer there anymore.
All right, I am going to run this other ad real fast. It's about, hey, you've been running Bet Online and got a little extra money? You need to invest that, right? You need to invest that. Don't just go out and blow it again. Don't double up. Don't let it ride, because that's how you lose it. You need to invest your money. And what I am about to say might shock you, but the greatest quarterback of all time is not just a GOAT on the field. He's a GOAT when it comes to investing as well. He invests in stocks, cryptos, even art. Now you can invest like the GOAT with Masterworks. Masterworks is an investing platform that lets you buy shares representing an investment in art from icons like Picasso, Monet, Warhol, and even great art priced outpaced the S&P 500 by 164% from 1992 and 2021. In fact, earlier investors already received over 30% IRR 2021 and 2020 from the sale of just 2 paintings. This is your opportunity to join 300,000 other members and invest like a goat. Get priority access with their game day promo. Go to masterworks.art/believe, BLEAV. That's masterworks.art/believe. See important disclosures at masterworks.io/disclaimer. Now, one thing I do want to go back to on the whole Frank Reich thing, and you're saying, his Matt Eberflus talking about, he wants the OC to make the calls. He wants his DC to make the calls. He's not making those calls. Let's go back about 2 months.
Yeah.
To the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Yes.
All right. And that game.
Yes.
During that game, there was a stretch where Carson Wentz threw the ball 26 straight times.
Yes.
After the game, someone, a reporter asked him, "Did you know that this was going on?" And Frank's answer straight, "Nah, I knew it was a lot, but I didn't know it was 26 in a row." And that right there.
Right.
That right there is why a head coach, by a lot of people believes they should not be making the calls. They're going to be able to manage the game a lot better.
Right. That's a perfect example of why head coach. It's a balancing act. It really is. You need to have someone tracking, and they typically do. They really typically do have someone tracking. Okay, hey, you've had 8 passes, 10 runs. We're looking a little balanced right now. We're good to go. To always remind you where you are. Hey, after 15 straight passes, there's no one on the headsets saying, "Hey, we've got." But you can't challenge a head coach if you're a coordinator in the moment. This is his team. This is what he wants to do. He's calling the shot. So who's going to override him unless the owner? And that's illegal. We've seen that play out with the Browns. We've seen that play out before. You can't call down and say, "Hey, this is what you need to do." But that's a perfect example of you need to manage the game and understand and watch the game from a different lens to manage it, to know when certain things need to be asserted. Now you have full autonomy to do so throughout the course of a game. And when you decide to call the plays, you're not watching defense. You're watching the defense, but your mind is offensively thinking about the next series and what needs to be done. And heck, you don't have time to go back and meet with your players and go through the iPad to know, okay, this is what hurt us. This is where your reads needs to be, et cetera, et cetera. So because you have to watch every phase of the game. So it takes away of the in-game corrections or what's the word I'm trying to find? In-game adjustments throughout the course of the game. So, Bill Belichick has been masterful with it. He lets his offensive coordinators do what they need to do. He has in his mind how the game should be run, and I'm sure he implements his opinions when he needs so, and the offensive coordinators obliged by it. So there's definitely a benefit to just being the head coach, and it's smart by Flus to recognize that.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a problem with Frank Reich is great at designing plays, right? I love the plays because he designs them with the strengths of the personnel that he has on the field at the time. And I don't have a problem with him, during the offseason and then working on plays, designing things up, working with his offensive coordinator and helping out in that general area. But during a game where it is most critical, you got to pay attention to the clock management, what's the flow of the game, understand, because he's got so much on his mind besides just, sitting there looking at the sheet going, all right, so analytics tells me that I need to do, because we all know that Frank Reich loves analytics, time to go for it on 4th down, or something of that. Well, that's just one extra thing he's got to think about on top of every down. He's got to make a play call, I mean, good Lord, you might be a great mind, but you can't, it is so much work to take care of everything else plus call every one of those plays.
Yeah. Let me give you another example. So the head coach, because he calls the plays, he's not in that room coaching on the Wednesday when the new plan is implemented. I'm sure he's there. This is our mindset. This is where we can, gain the advantage. This is what they're going to try to do to hurt us. These are the things we need to be aware of, and so forth. But once that's done, he's not in every single meeting because he has to go check and see if the defense, how they're doing, the special team. So your time is not committed to just one space. So when you leave, you have another person speaking for you on your behalf as the coordinator. He's going through all the legwork of it all. So can it be done? Yes. Is it challenging? Yes. But for a first-time head coach to have his moment, it's extremely difficult. And some guys just prefer it that way. If I'm going to go out, I'm going to go out swinging the way I know how to go out. And I remember, I'm going back to some of my experiences with this. When I was obviously after the season or after I was done, I still communicate with some coordinators I've had. And there were times where I was like, okay, what the heck was, we had a 3rd and 23. Why the heck are we going man? And, I'm not going to say who it was at this moment, but they were like, yeah, it wasn't me. I would never make that call. The head coach wanted to make that call. So it's like, oh, I see. So at times head coaches meddle, man. They meddle. It's like, hey, I need this run, and it happens. But I think Flus, if he can identify to have smart, listen, my motto is, if I were ever in that position, I'm going to hire the best minds possible. And I'm not going to have ego play a part in it because I'll be willing to take all the credit when things go well. And you got to be willing to jump on that sword when things don't go well. So, but it's his job to manage everyone. And I think from a managerial standpoint, that's in my mind a theory of a good head coach.
Yeah, most definitely. And he's really jumped, from, when he was with Cleveland with you and then the Cowboys and then moved up to be defensive coordinator, now a head coach. He's really moved through the ranks of the coaching trees this in the last 8-9 years.
And even at Toledo, even in college, he won defensive. He was the defensive coach of the year. So he's proven he's been able to really improve defenses, and it's the reason he's now the new head coach of the Chicago Bears. I wish him nothing but success.
Absolutely, same here. I just looking. We're all waiting patiently, Mr. Ballard and Coach Reich. We want to know, but make that decision really, really, really well. Don't just make a fly decision. All right.
Right.
Make sure that it is the perfect person for this defense, which I know you guys will, because you guys do your homework, and that's what's so important.
Right. The Ursays demand it. The Ursays demand that you do your due diligence. It's someone definitely. That's going to be. I'll tell you what, but definitely before, like, March is a time where teams start to work themselves back into buildings or what have you. So you want to have a guy in your building for a period of time. That way, from a coaching standpoint, when the players aren't there, you can vet him some more and understand just how he wants to coach his scheme, and have, your assistant coaches get hired so you can all iron out whatever needs to iron out. So when guys are back in the building, you hit it with a full head of steam. So that's going to be very important. The earlier they get this done, the better off the communications will be. And I think in the long run, it'll be better suited for the guys that's going to be, playing for the Colts next season, definitely on the defensive side of the ball.
Yeah, as much as I want them to do their due diligence, you make a very good point on, quickness is an issue too, because if you sit there and you lag on doing it, the guy you ended up wanting to be hired could be hired by somebody else. So you always got to keep that in mind as well. You're in a race with 31 other teams out there, so all right. I think that's probably going to do it for this Monday edition post championship weekend of Believe in Colts. You got anything else you want to say in closing?
No, I think we hit everything else. It's going to be, I'm looking forward to a Super Bowl like I always am every year. Maybe I'll be in.
We got 7 players in the Pro Bowl this coming weekend.
Yeah. So that's true. I'll be honest with you. I don't watch a lot of the Pro Bowl. I'll watch a little bit of it because no one really plays. Everyone's there to collect their check, come out of this healthy, and have a good time. And it's a chance for the players to wine and dine their family who sacrificed so much throughout the course of the season. So this is a chance where you and the kids and the family can catch up and have a good time and not play a meaningful game, but you're also there to have a good time and experience vacation, if you will, with your loved ones.
Okay, so you're not going to see like one of those hits that we saw yesterday where the safety comes down over the middle and lights you up.
No. Listen, there's no allegiance to my side of the conference. It's like, hey, listen, I'll play with. So this was the hardest thing that I had a problem with my first year at the Pro Bowl. You don't know the tempo. Practice is a joke. You don't put on pads. You're out there playing. You're sipping a Gatorade all day. You're not. It's not much effort at all.
It's easier off than OTAs.
Yeah. Oh yeah. It's like no one really wants to run or sweat or do anything. It's like an hour long. If that is mainly 4 or 5 plays, you can remember it. A 10-year-old could remember it. So that the tempo was the hardest part of it, is knowing, okay, who goes hard, who doesn't go hard. And some of the older guys that's been doing it forever, been perennial Pro Bowlers, they don't tell you because you have to, this part of the process. You're a rookie all over again. So you come out expecting to play, and then before you know it, you have guys, man, slow your ass down. So then you figure out, okay, what the tempo is. But it was fun in the end. It was really fun.
Well, I'm happy for the 7 guys that the Colts have that made it, especially all those first timers, because a lot of you definitely deserve to be there, and I'm glad that you're there. I won't be able to watch it because I will be in Indianapolis. Yeah, I'm doing a draft of my own for the basketball league. But I will definitely watch it afterwards just to see how my boys did, because I mean, it is what it is. It's still something nice that all these guys worked their tails off this past year to accomplish. So
it's the next best thing other than playing in the Super Bowl. It's the next best thing because now you're around your peers, you're around guys that you follow and admire. And
get a lot of autographs and switch jerseys and stuff like that.
Get a lot of autographs, a chance to connect with guys on a different level that you normally wouldn't have the time to do when you're playing in each other's city. So it's a great time to catch up, and you really get to see like other guys really follow you, and they really want the best for you. And it's a really fun time. The football community is close, and this is one of those events where you really get to see it on display all weekend.
All right, so that'll do it for this edition of Believe in Colts, brought to you by Bet Online. And as usual, I'm Lawrence Owen. That is DeQuell Jackson. And until next time, go Colts.
Go Colts.